Hey, creative souls, writers, word witches, thanks for being here. I'm happy that you tuned in. My name's Johnny. I am a published fiction writer and a retired adjunct writing professor. For 2 decades, I helped college students get their words on the page. Now I teach fiction writing and screenwriting to adults in custody. I believe I'm on this earth to heal the world through stories, whether it's the ones I write and tell or the ones that I help you write and tell. I'm new here on YouTube, and I really appreciate your likes, shares, and subscribes. And especially this month in April 2024, I'm really striving to get to 100 subscribers by the end of the month. So I hope you'll help me out and help me reach that. And especially if anything I say resonates or inspires you or impacts you in some positive way, I would really appreciate your help in growing my channel because, as I always say, stories can heal the world. So let's do it together. So today I want to talk about how this full moon in Scorpio can enhance your writing practice for the next 2 weeks. So I am recording and posting this on April 23rd, 2024. And I will offer this up front that the astrologer that I follow several astrologers, but the one I followed today to get the information about what's going on in the heavens and how it might relate to a writing practice, I got that from astrologer Nadia Shah, S-H-A-H, and she's here on YouTube and she's fabulous. I highly recommend that you check her out if you are into astrology. All right, so this full moon in Scorpio, the energy of Scorpio speaks to our deep connection with others, according to Nadia. It also is about self-love, which makes me very happy because if you follow me at all and you've heard me speak, you know that I always tell my clients and students that honoring our writing practice is an act of self-love. And so that this full moon is about that really makes me happy. One thing that we may find that happens over the next couple of weeks is that our vulnerabilities might get exposed, and which I think is always a great thing for a writer because we need to be able to go there to write stories that really touch people and stay with them, or that make an impact, leave an impression. So I'll talk more about what this might look like, but if our vulnerabilities get exposed, I always go to my writing practice to work those out, to purge them from myself, whether it's working on a project that I'm excited about and it allows me to not dwell on the vulnerability or whatever it is that happened. Or sometimes I might just write about that feeling because what it does then, it allows that alchemical process of just getting something outside of us and transforming it, so it doesn't weigh us down and cause a burden. So I hope in these next 2 weeks, I mean always, but definitely in these next 2 weeks because the energy is really primed for it, really lean on your writing practice. If you're feeling burdened or vulnerable about something, your writing practice is always there for you, always, always. There might also, during these next 2 weeks, be a desire for change, and which is interesting because we're on about to the very end of a Mercury retrograde, which I'll talk about in just a bit. But this desire for change is interesting timing, I think, given that we have been in a Mercury retrograde. So as I always say, I love to use those periods of time to go back and rework things that I've started, that I've maybe left sitting for a while. So it's a great time to reconsider, revise, and redo. The only thing, though, Nadia points this out, is to be strategic. And so as this applies to your writing, the way I see this is if you want to make, say, for example, you're working on a novel and you want to make some really big changes to it. And maybe you do this already, but I would say make a copy of that file and make these vast changes in the new copy. Because we never know, once this energy passes, 3-4 weeks from now, you may say, oh shit, I wish I hadn't done that. And then you'll have that other copy. So be very strategic about any big changes you want to make in your writing. Whether it's your writing practice, if you want to write more, which is me. I used to write every day and I've not done that for a while. And I really feel it. I've talked in other videos about how I'm just a different person when I write every day. So that's one change I'm planning to make. Or if your change is in some project you're working on, if it's a novel or a short story, just be very strategic and thoughtful about any changes you might make right now. Another thing of note is that this full moon is also involved in a larger configuration called a T-square. And this is happening because there's a square with Pluto. And this kind of energy, as Nadia says, can cause us to feel like our buttons are being pushed, maybe more than usual. And so I think in terms of a writer and the writing practice, again, lean on the writing. If my buttons feel pushed, I like using my writing as a way to sort things out. And again, even if it's not me writing about the thing that has pushed my buttons, just being involved in with my characters who I always love and their fictional worlds, it just really calms me and puts a lot of things in perspective. So over these next 2 weeks, if you're finding that you feel like people are pushing your buttons, just really lean on your writing, because like I said, it won't let you down. So there's also this regenerative quality about Scorpio, which again, interesting because it's coming right on the heels of a Mercury retrograde. So this is about letting go of baggage from the past and an appreciation about ourselves, according to Nadia. So what we're willing to do and sit with what we feel. So acknowledging where we are holding baggage. All right, so in terms of writing, what I hope for you is that you really take some time to appreciate who you are as a writer and to appreciate what you do as a writer, because it's really pretty phenomenal, I think. So I think all art is healing for the creators and for the people that view it, watch it, listen to it, read it. But I think there's something extra special about writing. And maybe it's just because I'm a writer, but I have witnessed this myself that, sure, songs can give us feelings, art can give us feelings. And granted, there is music and art that can also be very disruptive. But what I have found with writing is there is something particular about words and their impact on people. If you've written for a while, you've probably experienced this, that people who know you, if they read your work, they might really react to it. And it unnerves some people to read our words. But the cool thing is that, and I don't mean this in a manipulative way, that we do this to people, but the fact that we are able to do this with words is quite phenomenal. And so I hope that you will appreciate who you are as a writer, no matter your experience or level in your own mind. Even if you're wishing to write, but don't feel comfortable calling yourself a writer, I really hope you can appreciate what it is in yourself that compels you to do it. I hope you can appreciate the power that gives you, a good kind of power to create change in the world, and a good kind of power to heal yourself and others. And I hope you can appreciate the work you create. I hope that when you read your work, you can look at it and feel proud. So I really hope over the next 2 weeks, that you can really kind of sit with that, who you are as a writer, what it is you do for the world, and feel very good about it. So Nadia also talked about acknowledging that we have a choice about who we want to engage with, and about doing our own inner work and transforming ourselves and just letting others be who they are. So for me, this relates to our characters, right? I think this is a fabulous time to really think about letting our characters be who they are. And I think we always need to do that, but the energies right now are really primed for this. So I would say if you're working on a project and you have felt stuck in some way, or you're having trouble understanding a character, just really step back and allow them to take over and let them be who they are. And I hope the writing exercise that I offered in a video that I posted today about the root chakra, maybe give that a try and see how that works for you. Because when we are able to not worry so much about stringing together a perfect sentence, or having the right paragraphs follow each other, or having the perfect story arc, when we're able to just let go of all that and just freely write from our character's perspective or about them, that's when some really great things can happen in the writing, and we can kind of get ourselves out of the way. So some things to think about. What do we want to change? So what do you want to change about your writing? So as I mentioned earlier, it can either be about your practice, about a project you're working on. It can be about both. So what is it you want to change? And then where do you feel the most powerful with your writing? Is there something that you do in your writing that is unique? Is there something in your writing that you feel especially proud of? Is there something from your experience that you've written and really moved people? An interesting thing happens when we admit that we are powerless we then become more powerful. And it seems counterintuitive, but it's very true. So if we can let go, and Scorpio is all about this alchemical process, right? And that turning lead into gold. And when we can let go of trying to like make our characters do something, trying to make this part of the story do a certain thing, and just step back and let it come through us, then all sorts of doors open up. Trying to control things limits us to the things we can see for ourselves. Getting out of our own way opens us up to endless possibilities about how to write stories, how to depict characters on the page. So in terms of your writing, think about where you might be carrying a burden in it. Is the burden because you don't give yourself enough time to write? Is the burden because your lifestyle right now, the people in it, your obligations don't give you the time to write? Or is it in the writing itself? Say you have a novel. Does it feel heavy, say, in the middle? If you have a novel that feels heavy in the middle, then that's where you go to look during these next couple of weeks. Wherever you feel a burden when it comes to your writing practice, focus on that over the next 2 weeks. And this is where you can turn the burden of the lead into gold. Okay, so now let's briefly talk about this Mercury retrograde that's going direct on Thursday, the 25th of April. According to Nadia, Mercury at that point will be hand in hand with the North Node. All right, so this again allows more doors to open. And as she says, this can mean kind of karmically, like new people, places, and things entering in. So this relates back to what I was just saying about kind of letting go and letting the characters and the story and the writing take you where it wants to go for a bit. And you might be surprised to find out that new people, places, and things show up in the writing. And I will mention this about my novel, Miranda's Garden. When I was working on the I think it was the fifth draft of it, there was one character in it that something just, and I was wide open to whatever might come. And something came to me when two other characters were talking in a scene that there was a third character that had a condition, a very important condition, and I won't say what it is. I will wait until the novel's published and I know people are reading it, and then I'll talk about the significance that that also had for me personally. But once I allowed that to happen and this condition that this character had, it explained everything about them, every difficult thing about them. And, you know, that came from my own subconscious. I channeled it from the divine, both, who knows. But that happened because I allowed it to. And even though it was my fifth draft, I was not interested in, you know, white knuckling it and having this death grip on it to make it be what I wanted. And in the end, it ended up being better because of it. So be open to new people, places, and things showing up in your work. One thing she also says is that these new energies will feel messy and complex and even challenging. I hope that you will be okay with letting that be. I think the process of writing is very messy. And that's why I always say I never get writer's block, because I really don't give a rip about writing crap. I just let things come out. And then in that pile of crap are these little nuggets oftentimes that I can then use. Just know that the feeling of messiness and the complexity of it all, it won't last. Focus on the next 2 weeks and just see what happens. This energy might also bring to surface some deep wounds within us and maybe in our characters. Like this condition I mentioned for my other character. You know, something may surface in that regard. If deep wounds come up in you, again, I just say lean into your writing practice. Pour it into that, because that is where the healing takes place. The good news though is, we may feel more awake, more alive than we have for a long time, and really able to envision. So I think this is a really cool kind of maybe even juxtaposition of this, being able to envision, but just letting go and letting the writing be what it's going to be just for the next 2 weeks and see what happens. So one last thing I want to mention that's going on this week in the heavens is Venus meets Chiron. So Chiron, if you don't know, is the wounded healer. Venus is about love and art and beauty. This could also, with all this other stuff that's happening, could bring up lots of feelings about the self and self-worth, all right? And vulnerability again. So you might be feeling lots of feelings, and may even, because Venus is about love, maybe making us think about what makes us lovable, what we consider beautiful, and really owning our unique beauty. And I will say also, like, understanding love differently and more deeply. So if we take this in relation again to writing, I mentioned this earlier, but what I really love for you to do over the next couple of weeks is really think about what is lovable about you in terms of your writing. And remember, I truly believe that when we honor our writing, it's an act of self-love. What is it you do when you write that you love? What is it you love about writing for yourself? What is it about you, the writer, that you love? And remember, I said earlier, what you do is a phenomenal thing. What you do, I believe, is absolute magic. It's not a luxury. It's not frivolous. It's very important. It's much needed. And that you do it is an amazing thing. And so I hope you can take some time to really think about how to love yourself around your writing, whether it's writing letters to yourself over the next couple of weeks, whether it's really stepping back and saying, wow, I actually have built a writing practice, or whether it's to say, that story that I wrote is really good. And don't worry about sounding braggy. You don't have to share this with anybody. You can if it's someone you trust, but just really, I hope that you will work on internalizing how your writing is an act of self-love and what you love about yourself as a writer and what you contribute to the world. So the last little bit that I want to mention that Nadia talked about in her video about this full moon, and especially about this Venus meeting Chiron, is that we may be confronted with the barriers that we have built to love, how they are draining us of our power and keeping us from that deep connection that we desire. So again, relating this to writing, think about where you may have set barriers for yourself that may be getting in the way of your writing. Are you doing something that is not allowing you to write as often as you would like? Do you have voices in your head that tell you, you shouldn't be doing this, that's not very good, you're not a writer? Really think about those barriers that exist in your writing itself, in your mind about your writing, and in your writing practice. And just be very, very kind to yourself, always, always, especially over the next 2 weeks. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments how it went for you. And I'd always love to hear what you're working on and all of that, and I'll respond. So as always, I send you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.